Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another live stream right here on Free Will Photos. Today, what we're going to be looking at is using the perfect brush inside of On1 Photo Raw, so that way you can get better masking overall. It's also going to give you an opportunity to understand some of the mechanics behind masking, or really just refining selections or making some pretty good selections. All right. Now, I am going to be using a combination of my Wacom tablet and my mouse today, just because for me, one, I don't feel like I use it enough in the products or the content that I create here on Free Will Photos. So I just wanted to get that incorporated. Um, Shout it out down below if you'd like to see a video of how a Wacom tablet can either increase or could also be a not so beneficial to your workflow. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and jump right into today's lesson. So I'm going to move over to the slides. And like I said, today we are going to be looking at how to use the perfect brush inside of On1 Photo Raw. All right. Now let's move on to the next PDF page. There we go. And let me get my big head out of the way because I don't want to block the contents there. All right. So first announcement that I wanted to make is we have 500 plus subscribers. So I want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting the channel, and you guys have clicked the subscribe button. I was actually messing around with the analytics this morning, just trying to figure out what all that stuff means. And I noticed, that there are a lot of people who have selected to have the notifications turned on. And that's very evident just in the first couple days of the video going live and people coming out and supporting it. So I truly appreciate all of the subscribers and everyone who leaves comments and we have conversation. You guys suggest things. I really do appreciate it. And in light of hitting 500 subscribers, I am creating a color mini series, and that's going to be launching in July. Now, this is going to be a not a over the top in depth, but this is going to be really focused on getting creative with how you manipulate color inside of On1 and inside of your photos. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be starting on July 3rd. Now, there's going to be a video in the series, or a new video, whatever, that will be posted every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Now, that's obviously one additional video beyond what is already being broadcast or uploaded to YouTube, with one video coming out on Tuesday and then the live stream on Saturday. But what I'm going to do here in this mini series is have an additional video, just because I think that there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with color inside of On1 Photo Raw, and we're just going to explore that. So stay on the lookout. July 3rd is the launch of that particular color series. I was not looking to launch one on July 1st, so there you go. With that being said, there will not be a live stream July 3rd, 10th, or the 17th. The reason, I'm going to be on vacation and I'm not going to be available to do live streams at my computer, So that is what we're going to do. However, I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. There's going to be videos posted July 3rd, 10th, and the 17th. And those are all going to be videos correlating with the color series. So we're going to go all July long looking at color and how to manipulate it. So you'll have an opportunity to watch those and provide feedback. Now, that being said, I'm going to be on vacation, which means I'm going to be away from my computer. We're actually going to go out camping for quite some time. And just away from technology overall. But with that being said, it's going to take me some time to respond to comments, and I probably won't see them until the 17th, which means I may not reply until the 18th or the 19th. So just keep that in mind. And then last but not least, if you have not already signed up for the free email list, I have to encourage you to do that today. If you're watching this, no matter when you're watching it, if you haven't signed up, check the description box below. There is a link that will take you to the sign up page, and completely for free to you. Like it's completely free. Just sign up. And what I'm doing is working on some presets that will be free released, but the people on the email list, you guys are going to get them first. I've been working on these presets for, I want to say 2.5, maybe even 3 months. I don't know. I've been working on them for quite some time. And I think they're getting to a point where they're ready to be shared widely. Now, these are different presets than the day to night presets and the ones that come free with just signing up for the newsletter or for the email list. These are very specific and they're, I guess for lack of better words, they're the free will photos, photo editing preset pack, so to speak. So take that for what it's worth and sign up so you can get those. All right, so let me go ahead and put the camera back on. So the perfect brush inside of ON1 Photo Raw. All right. Now, if you haven't realized, I did a screen capture from the user manual, so that way you can see that exactly what ON1 wants you to know about the perfect brush. And the very first thing that they want you to know, like I'm only going to read the highlighted segments. If you want to read the full, everything that ON1 has to say about the perfect brush, which by the way, is not very much. You can download the user guide, go to page 87 and 88, and you can read the little segment that's there, which is why I think a lot of people have asked, hey, what is the perfect brush? How do you use the perfect brush? Can you help explain the perfect brush? Which is what brings us to today's video or live stream. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and read the first highlight. The masking brush collects the colors under the center of the brush and applies the effect only to those colors. So that's very self-explanatory, right? At the center of the brush, and we'll talk about this when we get into ON1. At the center of the brush, there's these little crosshairs, be it a plus sign or a minus sign. Now, wherever you click first, it's going to sample that color. And as you brush, the size of your brush is going to look for those colors that were under the center of the brush and only apply the masking at the opacity and the flow and feather that you set for the brush. It's only going to apply it to those colors. So this is like a color selective adjustment. And you have some tools here that you can choose how you want this color to really impact how you want the brush to read the color underneath as you paint. So the first one is the color threshold. And again, only reading the highlight segments here. This controls the balance between the keep and the drop colors based on the area you are working on. So if you pull the slider all the way to the left, it is going to be so dialed in and pinpoint and very specific to the color that you clicked on originally that as you paint over your areas, it's only going to look for those colors and apply whatever the brush settings are to those colors. And vice versa. If you pull that all the way over to the right and you put it up to 100%, it's going to give a wide range of colors that it wants to work for. So, just keep that in mind. If you want this to be something where you want a lot of colors added into your threshold, then you want to pull that closer to 100. And if you don't want more of the color, you're going to pull that closer to 0. And then the last option that we have to impact, or that we can change, is the transition. And what this does is it creates a soft edge. I'm sorry. You can create, I'm going to paraphrase this one because the highlight doesn't really make sense, but I'm going to paraphrase it. Look, what this is saying is between the color that you select and the fade off into the surrounding colors of that particular color, how much do you want this effect to transition between those colors? Now, I always recommend that you have some sort of transition. Otherwise, you're going to get like these really weird hard edges, and it's not going to be the hard edges transition between contrasted areas. It's going to be like very blotchy, and it's not going to look good, and you're going to have a hard time trying to modify that and correct it. So you should have at least a little bit of transition just to give like the natural aesthetic. Now, of course, if you are going for blotchy, weird, awkward, strange looking things, then go for that. You know, that's you. Do you. All right. But if you're not, then I recommend that you leave a little bit of transition. And again, I'm going to show that to you here in a second. So I think we're going straight into the examples. So let me go ahead and switch over to the camera, or ON1 Photo Raw. And as you can see, here we are inside the awesome ON1 Photo Raw. And I already have my magic brush, or perfect brush, selected. As you can tell up here in the top of the pane here. Now I'm going to go over the brush settings just really quickly, just so that way you understand when I start doing stuff. First one is I'm using a regular shaped brush. All right, this is just a round brush. It says eyelashes, but that's not it. The eyelashes are down here. This is just a round brush. All right. Now I'm set to paint in, and that's just because my mask is on invert. I typically like to work on a paint in mode. So I invert my mask. So I'm just painting in what I want the effect to do. Sometimes it's on a paint out, but that's neither here nor there. The size of the brush, not really important, other than the fact that I use the keyboard shortcuts, the bracket keys above the return key, the left and right bracket. Left bracket makes it smaller, right bracket makes it larger. And then when I'm using my Wacom tablet, I have a little a pressure sensitive circle on it. I don't know what anyway, it's like a jog wheel, right? So I use that. And then of course the feather. I like to feather most of my adjustments. Now, if I'm making a hard edge selection, then I absolutely turn the feather down, because I don't need that much of a transition, or I'll bring it up to like maybe 1 or 2. And that just gives me a little bit of transition, as I talked about earlier. But that's not transition internal to what I'm painting. That's transition from the edge of what I would like to paint. And here, let me just switch tools real quick. So when I use the feather on the brush, right here, I'm going to zoom in so it's a little bit easier to see. If I were to paint along this edge and I had a feather on my brush, what it's going to do is feather at the edge of the brush into whatever the limit is, right? So if I rub my brush right along this edge, I'm going to get this like feather effect of the effect being fully applied at the edge of the brush, and then gradually transitioning out to not being applied. All right. That's how feathering works. However, transition works inside of the brush, and it's the transition between the colors that you selected. So again, that's going to be an example that I show you. And I just went back to my brush by hitting the letter B on the keyboard, if you're not familiar with the keyboard shortcuts. All right. And please feel free to drop any questions in the comment section as I go through these things. And just want to make sure that everyone's on the same sheet of music when it comes to painting, because I'll be honest, the perfect brush, it's a simple tool, but if you are not combining it with the regular brush settings, you're going to get varied results. So I just want to make sure everyone understands how to use the basic tools of the brush. So then the next thing is opacity. And I actually have a video on how opacity works inside of ON1. But essentially, if you bring this down with one click, you're going to put 69% of whatever 100% of the effect would look like. That's what that, if you click one time, and I'll make a crazy adjustment here. So if I click one time and pass over this, that's at 69% of whatever 100% would look like. Then I'm going to crank this up to 100%, drag this all the way over, and that's what 100% looks like. Now, obviously, this is not a great adjustment, but I just want to show you what opacity does. All right, so let's go ahead and reset that. Put it on invert. And then we have flow. So what flow does is it's a buildup over time, but if you have opacity set to 100%, and this really works better with a Wacom tablet. So if you have a Wacom tablet, pressure sensitive with the stylus, what you can do is you see how it's building up over time. At the edge here, you can see that it's not at 100%. And now I don't have my pressure sensitivity turned on very well, I don't think. Yeah. So pressure adjusts opacity. I don't have that turned on. So, but if I were to just tap it one time, I get that. But as soon as I start to drag it, it starts to build up to that 100%. Again, you play with these things, you will find exactly what they do. All right. With a mouse, it doesn't work the greatest, but it can work. And I do use my flow quite often. And then the angle, which with a round brush, angle doesn't matter. But if I had like clouds, then I can change the angle at which the brush would go. But for the most part, when you're using the perfect brush, it's for selections and you're not using it creatively as in the brush shape, So like if I had this little leaf, I can change the angle of the leaf to be that direction, right? But with a round brush, it doesn't really matter, so I'm not going to cover angle. All right, feather, let's go ahead and drop that down. We'll leave it at 5, and then I'm going to put the angle back to 0 just for things later on in life. Why are you being non-cooperative? There we go. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the information inside of the gear icon, because as you can see, I have the perfect brush selected. Keyboard shortcut there is Command or Control R, or you can just click. Gray means it's off, blue means it's on. Turn on the gear icon. You can also turn on and off the brush inside of the gear icon by checking this little bubble. If it's not checked and you don't have access to your threshold in your transition, it's because this bubble isn't checked. But as soon as you check it, it enables these transitions. These controls. Now, as you can see, what I have is the threshold set to 100. Threshold set to 100 and transition set to 100. So what that means is it's going to select every color that is even remotely close to the sample color that I click on originally. That's what the color threshold, and it's going to paint the effect in over that. So as you can see on this brick or stone bridge, there is a lot of contrast in it, right? There's some dark grays here, there's some browns here, and I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so maybe it'll be a little bit easier to see, right? So in just this little area, oh, that's not the bridge, it's the back of the wall. There we go. There's the bridge. All right. So in just this little area, we have different color values of essentially the same color, which is like a gray to brown threshold, right? So when I paint, and I'm going to select this darker color, when I paint, you're going to see that it's pretty much selecting everything, because that gray is in almost all of whatever this adjustment is, right? Or I'm sorry, in this area. However, if I come over here and I paint, it's going to do the exact same thing. Now, let's go ahead and reset that, invert, and then we're going to come and change the color threshold. We'll leave the transition at 100%, just so you can see what these do. I'm going to drag this all the way down to the bottom, all right? And now I'm going to click in the same first point, which was this darker area, click and drag, and you can see there's a little less of the selection happening as I drag across, right? Now, if I go to my settings and I bring my transition all the way down and I drag across as well, and for some reason it wants to select everything. So now it looks like I didn't do anything. Now what is going on with this? That's embarrassing. Technical difficulties, guys. That is not how this is supposed to work. That's weird. Maybe because I'm zoomed in so far? No. What it's supposed to do is give a separation, because I have my color threshold down, maybe because it was at 0. No. I don't know why it's selecting so much. It doesn't make sense to me. Promise you I know what I'm talking about. For some reason, this particular image does not want to work. Bear with me for 1 second as I figure out why ON1 does not want to. Okay, there we go. So when you have your transition down to 0, I guess I've never had my transition down to 0 because, as I've mentioned, well, no, see? That doesn't make sense. ON1 does what it wants to do, apparently. I've never ran into that issue until just now, and I don't know why, because now it's working the way that it's supposed to. So just forget about that. All right? Forget about that. Let's go ahead and reset this, invert, and yeah. All right, cool. Shift X, and we'll just erase all of that. Well, I'll turn off the perfect brush, and I'm just going to erase this. Okay. And Shift X. Now we're back on track. Don't know what that anomaly was. Perfect brush turned on, and we have our settings down to color threshold at 1, transition set to 0. And when I drag this, you're going to see that it only selects the color that I originally selected. All right, that's what it was supposed to do. Now, as I increase this color threshold, we'll select a different portion of the image. We'll click and drag over here. You can see it's selecting more. That's essentially what's happening. Now, I have my feather set to 100%. If I bring my feather down to 0, you're going to see a harder edged brush, and that means it's just not it's transitioning less, right? Because the edge of the brush is where the transition begins. Whereas if I put on a feather, which I typically, now my computer doesn't, there we go. All right, and we'll come over here and we'll click and drag, and as you can see, it's picking up more colors because the threshold is higher. The transition is still set to 0, but if I bring the color threshold down, then it's going to select less of the colors that are like the sampled color, just like so. All right, that's in a nutshell how this is supposed to work. So what does that mean to you when you are doing your adjustments? Well, let me show you. Let's go ahead and hit reset, invert, and I'm just going to reset the settings on here. Let's see what happens with auto. Let's invert that. Nope, that looks awful. So let's go ahead and develop this particular image real quick. Just give it a little contrast by bringing the white and the black points over. We'll even add in contrast. Maybe compress those colors just a little bit. No, I mean not the colors, the tonality. Let's open up some shadows. Maybe I'm still zoomed in a little bit too much. Detail, crank that up. All right, so now we have like this nice contrasty grungy looking image, and I may only want to apply this to certain areas of the image and not to exceed outside of those areas. So I can hit invert and I go back to this more flat image with the perfect brush selected. Maybe I just want only the rocks, or like the rocky areas, which is essentially everything except for these trees, to be given this adjustment that I just made. Well, I'm gonna grab my Wacom tablet just because I think that that is the way that I want to work today. So I'm going to turn my perfect brush on, which it already is, make my brush just about the size of the item that I want to paint. Go ahead and select this, and you can see that it is painting in only in those selected areas. So if I hit O, it's making a more refined selection of an area, right? Now, this is one way of working with the perfect brush. Now, let me show you the painting without the perfect brush. So I just turned off the perfect brush, and I'm going to paint this area in down here. And as you can see, I'm at 100% opacity, 100% flow, which all of those things really do matter. And it's just painting it in essentially in the entire area. So here I'm getting a little bit more refined selected painting. Here it's just, hey, if your brush is there, we're going to paint in the effect. And that's essentially what the perfect brush is designed to help you with. Now, where you refine what the perfect brush does is by getting your opacity down and bringing your flow down, and then adjusting where your threshold and your transition is. As I mentioned before, I always recommend a short amount of transition. And, you know, if you want to be really refined, you can go with a small amount of color threshold. That's up to you. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and paint in on these rocks here. And you can just see how that's bringing some detail into these areas where there wasn't very much detail. All right. And it's doing it in a way that is a little bit more refined, and it doesn't leave like this weird blending looking thing, right? It's, yeah, it's that. All right. I don't know what else to say about that. It works. Experiment with it. It'll be worthwhile, right? So let's go ahead and look at it before and after. So this is before the adjustment. It's very subtle with the adjustment, but it's still something that makes the photo pop a little bit more. And this is just one instance of using this type of adjustment, right? Or the perfect brush. So if I were to get rid of that and Where the perfect brush really shines is when you're doing something like, let's throw a split tone on here, right? Something that's extremely noticeable. We'll go ahead and crank this up just a little bit, bring the amount up here, and maybe even flip the colors. Yeah, there we go. And then we'll go to our mask, invert, and I'm going to paint this color in just around these areas here, right? The split tone that we just applied. Just like so. And it's only applying right now to the stones, really, which that could be good or bad, just depends on what you want. Now, mind you, I have my opacity down. You can go to 100% if you want this to be like super, super in the face. I'm just painting where I think this particular adjustment should be, changing really just the tone in the rocks from a orange hue to a more blue hue, which is what it seems to be doing. Okay, so we'll look at that before and after. And again, that's also a very subtle adjustment. Let's just go to a completely different photo example, because I do have a photo example where I use the perfect brush to make a selection specifically so I can do a composite, which is not in this. Yeah, let me just grab the mouse. Navigating with a Wacom pen is not the most, it's not easy. I think those are actually in the folder. Let me see which folder I put them in. I think it was in the masking one. Nope. Let's go back another one. Third-party applications, maybe? I think it was this one. Nope. It's like I should have had these ready to go. Is it in the composite images? No, it doesn't. Oh, there's another folder. Nope, not there either. Maybe I have it in this folder. If I can't find it, then I was just looking at it not too long ago, so it shouldn't be too hard to find, but apparently I don't know where it's at. So, oh, this folder. Yeah, there it is. All right. Found it. Got folders on folders for quite a few different things. All right. So here we have this image. It's really two images, and you're looking at the final product of the image, but sorry about that. It's still loading. And you can tell just because down here it still says the name. Yeah, and it won't let me advance. So we'll let ON1 think, but essentially there's two photos in this one composite, right? So there's the photo of this guy sitting on the rock, and then there's this sunflower looking thing in the background. Well, the rock dude is here and the sunflower is here, and I had to mask him out so that way this works, and you can see it got some really, really tight edges there. Now, I don't know, is ON1 quitting on me? I may have to restart ON1. All right, I'm gonna just switch back to me for a second. As soon as I do that, it decides to load the photo. So just got to be patient. I don't know what took that so long. So let me go ahead and turn off the final image so you can see the layers behind it. So as you can see, the background here is the sky. And then I went ahead and I threw this little sunflower on top of it. Sorry. And the opacity is low. If I bring the opacity all the way up, you can see I didn't do the greatest job at masking around the edges as I could have, but by bringing the opacity down, some of my mistakes, which this is just the way it is, and at times they get hidden. And then I also desaturate the entire photo so it really hid my mistakes. So there you go. Behind the scenes secrets of photo editing. Now, what I did is, I'll show you the mask. I did use the perfect brush, and it just didn't get everything the way that I wanted it to, or at least the way that I've seen this working out for me, right? So let's see if we can come back here and fix this. So what I wanted to be on was mask out because I wanted to get rid of the flower in these areas. And we'll go ahead and hit reset so you can see what I was actually trying to do, right? So the flower is on right now. It's over all of this, but I don't want that. Now and these are the times when I would use mask out. Now I'm going to turn off the perfect brush for a second just to get rid of the bulk here, right? Like I don't need to really refine an edge here specifically because it's not that big of a deal. And I guess now would be a good time to mention refine edge is probably, or the refinement tools are probably really good to be aware of as well. All right. But we're not going to get into those today. So now what I want to do is make my brush size a little bit smaller, zoom in just a little bit here. Go ahead and come down here. I'm using the mouse right now. And what I'm going to do is put my minus sign right over the edge where I want the effect to not be. And then just move this up to the edge of the cliff there, or mountain, whatever this is. And just click and drag. And sometimes you got to do a few passes. But what you're going to notice is I'm starting to go into, like, it's not a perfect selection. And that's fine, right? You don't have to be overly perfect. Don't want to get rid of that much. So I'll bring it down. And the goal here is just to get it good. That's all you're really trying to do. It doesn't have to be over the top perfect, and it should be a little bit better, but and I can even bring down my feather just so we get that hard edge, since this is a pretty rocky terrain. We'll paint right over this gentleman here. And I do recommend you do this in multiple click passes because if you don't, what may end up happening is you get a good chunk of stuff deleted, and then you come to find out that you need to get, you make a mistake and then you have to redo the area that you just did. So recommend you do this in a few separate clicks. And I know that this is not very entertaining, so what I'm going to do is stop right after I get this segment and show you the mask, and then talk you through the end result. So I will go there. And that's good enough for what we're doing here. Hit O. Yeah. So it looks like there's still some left right in this area. So this is where I would turn off the perfect brush, hit O, and then I would delete all of this because there's no need for any of that to be there, right? And this is 100% trial and error. Your image is going to require different things than my image, right? So, food for thought. Now, the final result is what we'll take a look at. And I'll just close that. I went ahead and threw a black and white adjustment on it because that hides a lot of that. But you can see I have a nice tight edge, or at least seemingly, you know otherwise now. But I did use the perfect brush to do that. I could have used the refinement tools, but I didn't want to use it. And then the opacity, I threw in dynamic contrast, black and white. I guess I got two dynamic contrasts. The first one is on this rock. The second one is on getting more detail out of these little sunflower looking things. All right. So the last thing that I want to show you about the perfect brush, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up today's live stream, is using it with local adjustments, and specifically the paint with color. Man, I don't know why I'm so tired. Don't know why. I'm going to go ahead and open up this flower. I think these are just like, they talk to me, right? And we're going to go local. We're going to go paint with color. And we are going to hit this, turn on our perfect brush. And I think we're just going to paint some random color. Let's pick a color from the photo, maybe. This purple here. Yeah, that'll work. All right. What we're going to do is paint over some of these leaves that don't have as much of that purple. And what it's going to let us do is add it in. Now, that does not look good at all. So we're going to drag our opacity down. So that way we don't get so much of the color. Because we just want to enhance it a little bit. Yeah, like that. Now, again, lots of subtleties, but still able to add in some nice detail. And you can mess around with this, use your imagination on however you would prefer to use the local adjustment tool along with the perfect brush. Maybe we want to throw some purple into these leaves. I don't know. No, I don't. But it can get, it can be something you want to do. I don't know. Moral of the story, the perfect brush is a great tool for refined edits where you're selecting more by the color. And then, of course, you still have your opacity, your feather, and your flow that you need to adjust. And you'll have to adjust that really based off of your own preference or needs. Everything else below the break is just a brush, the additional brush adjustments. You don't have to worry about those if you're not using anything that requires manual spacing. That's typically with all of the custom brushes. If you want to space out how those are working, and then the pressure adjust size and the pressure adjust opacity. Those are if you're using a Wacom tablet, as I was using just a little while ago. So again, you don't have to worry about that so much if you're not doing that. Now, what you will want to be aware of is as you are painting, sometimes you're going to go over the edge And that's where you'll have to come in here and say, okay, what is my transition looking like? Does it look good? You know, the higher the transition, the better it's going to work going into those other colors and areas. The lower the transition, the worse it's going to work. So just know that. And I shouldn't say the worse it's going to work. There are a lot of moving parts to masking as a whole. So don't be overwhelmed. Trial and error. It will eventually work. And it's not that I'm telling you to jump in and you know, go completely trial and error, because I think that these are reasonable settings, about a transition of 15 and maybe a color threshold of 5, right? That's probably going to get you started pretty well with making selections based off of what your needs are for your image. And then it's really just how much of the effect do I want to paint in all at once? Do I want the full effect? Or do I want the full effect, or do I want just a part of the effect? All right. Obviously, I don't want the full effect when I'm painting with a color. I usually want a smaller opacity of the effect because I don't want it to be obvious. I just want it to enhance the area in which I'm working. So, food for thought, something for you to think about in your own photo editing. So let's go ahead and jump back over to our slides. And we are now at the Q&A portion. So hopefully there are some questions, because sometimes I feel like maybe I did or did not explain things well. And if I didn't, then that's fine. I'm not a perfect person, or, you know, I'm not like some super genius sensei expert when it comes to ON1 Photo Raw. I'm a user of the program, just trying to share my knowledge, things that I've learned with everyone. So I'll pause here for a second, see if there's any questions, get a sip of my water, and if not, then we will close out the stream. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions, and that's perfectly fine. If you start messing around with the perfect brush and you're trying to figure out like, okay, I think I got this, but I'm not sure if it's right, whatever, and then you run into questions, you can always come back to this video, drop the question there, or you can shoot me an email at freewillphotos@gmail.com, and I'll answer your question there as well. So hopefully today I was able to help those of you who are having the question about the perfect brush inside of ON1 Photo Raw. If I was, then please smash this video with a thumbs up. And if I didn't, then don't be afraid to hit the thumbs down. It will not hurt my feelings. Or at least I won't tell you. No, I'm just kidding. Look, it's not going to hurt my feelings. If this was not helpful, then I need to know, so that way I can prepare them. And I will ask, if you don't believe that it was helpful, that you at least explain to me what you think would be useful moving forward. So that way, I have some insight to what I can improve on. But just telling me that it's not helpful is a little bit of a stretch and hard for me to gauge like what wasn't helpful, right? Constructive feedback is what I'm asking for. Nonetheless, I really do appreciate every one of you who come support this channel, the videos, and provide feedback, liking, all that good stuff. And of course, everyone who subscribes. I really do appreciate that. I mean, we are at 500 plus subscribers. That's just amazing, right? Started this channel about a year ago, give or take, and I had no idea where it was going to go, and I'm excited for where it continues to move forward. So until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.